Hi and welcome to Sacred Spaces. I'm Laura Kelly and today we've got an amazing place to show you. It's the family house of internationally renowned architect and writer Robin Boyd that he built for his own family in 1958. He was a visionary writer, educator, social critic and architect. So who better to tell us about the man, his ideas and his own house than Daryl Jackson, Chair of Heritage Council Victoria and a leading educator and architect himself. Let's go meet him. Daryl, welcome to the show. This is an amazing space that you've picked as your sacred space. We're inside Robin Boyd's family house that he built in 1958. Can you tell me why you've chosen this space as your favourite?
Well, I'll try to. I hope you like it, but if you don't like this one, I've got others. The question is that Robin Boyd was a very extraordinary Australian, and the reason that I chose it is to celebrate really his life and the advancement that he made as an architect and as a thinker about our lives upon almost all the other houses that are currently being built. This is a house in which a family of 3 children were brought up. We're sitting in the bedroom and living room, and as people would see when we go through the house, there's an enormous flow of space between one room and the exterior and other rooms. So it's a house turned inside out, as it were. And outside this space here, there's a garden space that's actually the heart of the house. So it's a courtyard space. And so sitting here, you and I are looking down into the garden. We're looking across to the Dandenongs. And we're really right in Walsh Street, South Yarra. So we're in the heart of Melbourne as well.
Now, we're going to have a look through this amazing house very shortly. There's some really innovative features in this, particularly when we think this was built in 1958.
Yes. Robin
Boyd, I mean, was really a visionary and a leader in architecture. At the time, what would people have made of this house in 1958, do you think?
I think it would be mystified, perhaps, in some way. On the other hand, once you came and saw this house in operation, architecture does 2 things. It operates in people's lives, but it's also aspirational. And Boyd was really interested in the house as a piece of poetry and a piece of intelligence as much as about its operations. And so it's an indivisible concept, as it were, where the 2 things are being brought together in a very strongly built form, a form that related to he and his wife's life, as well as to the nature of the house. So there's a true expression of the intertwining of both those 2 objectives. The house we're sitting in now in this room, I could hear a conversation from downstairs. So you could be chatting to somebody who's downstairs preparing supper or doing the dishes, doesn't matter. And so this sense of living a life that's integral to exchange and to conversation is one of the key points. Modern families, generally speaking, converse better amongst themselves in more open and friendly ways in Australia than past generations. So this house expresses, I think, that context. The space beyond this particular room and downstairs where we'll go consists of 3 bedrooms outside in the back beyond the garden for the children. And as the children were growing up, so they lived their lives in terms of doing homework and things like that, but were always welcomed into here, but they could depart if they wanted. So this sense of fluidity in the way in which we exchange our lives with our children is very important as well.
Well, I can't wait to see the rest of the house, so should we go off and have a bit of an explore?
We can easily do that.
So Daryl, we're down here now in the combined family kitchen area of the house. In terms of the way that this was designed and the flow that Robin Boyd was obviously trying to get to reflect his life and also direct his life a little bit, the life of the family. How does that expand into his ideas about society at the time?
Well, we're sitting at a dining room table in which most of the ideas were expounded. So if you came to dinner, there'd be 10 or so people here wanting to get at topics and arguments and discussion. And most of those discussions centred around the way in which we lived, the way in which we thought about the landscape, the way in which we thought about the way in which cities could be built and should be built, and the way in which architecture is just one of those elements, integrated itself into the society in which we live. So Boyd's ideas were in 3 or 4 different compartments, if you like. Most people remember him as an architect. They do also think of him as a writer, and certainly we've just had the republication of Australian Ugliness, its 50-year celebration this year. So he wrote books about us as Australians and commented about us as Australians and made us start to think better, I think, about the way in which our lives could be extended and expanded. And so it wasn't just dining room talk, it was really talk about an educational model that equipped people, if they're wanting to be equipped, to think more widely about the way in which we used land, the way in which we put our houses on the land, and the way in which we educated ourselves. He would think the cosmopolitan nature of Australia that has now grown up beyond 1958 would have been very stimulating and very exciting. And in the post-1950s, many Australians thought everything had to happen elsewhere and had to come from some imperialist drive from somewhere else. But subsequently, I think the social revolution with families and with women in particular entering the family life wholeheartedly and in the workforce wholeheartedly, and our educative model, he would have been really stunned by that had he lived beyond 1972.
Do you think as well that he saw the home as a place of learning?
Yes, I do, and I think sitting around here as we were chatting, he embraced really the whole of his life. He was always writing or reading or drawing, and at this table he may well have drawn sketch plans and so on and whizzed them in to see a client with the next day. He was a prodigious worker, and he designed numerous houses. So this was a place of learning, living, expressing his art and his form of life and sharing it with his family as it was happening. So it was a major production.
And that idea of sharing as well, we're sitting here in this quite open plan space and it feels, it feels very modern, yes, but it also feels quite similar to the way a lot of us live our lives with this open plan idea. At the time though, in 1958, were kitchens and family rooms normally joined like this, or? No,
generally not, because I think in the post-war period people had inherited houses from the 30s in which they were clearly segregated. Would have been some of the people in the 50s and 60s that were building more adventurous houses in Beaumaris or here in Melbourne, let's say, down along the beachfront and so on, beyond Mentone. You would find younger couples, post-war couples, so to speak, opening up their houses, mostly because they didn't have a lot of money and therefore it all had to be conjoined. So that sense, though, of being able to live a fluid life starts to comment on the breakdown or compartmentalisation of life. And so I think that fluidity has been fantastic for Australians. We expect to live in a reasonably free society and be able to carry our conversation freely.
Well, I'd love to check out this courtyard, the internal courtyard. So should we go and have a look at that?
Do that.
So we're out here in the internal courtyard. Can you place us a little bit, Daryl?
Oh, okay. We're really in the centre of the house, right here. And to this side are children's bedrooms and the study for Robin, and we've just come from the living room downstairs and the sitting room and bedroom upstairs. Boyd's view about life was that drawing things together and having a core and having the edges was really very important. So the house has these outer edges and we're right in the heart of it and in the centre of it. He had a view about Australian life that thought our own lives should be the centre of our lives and we should not be supplicants to other people's views of us. So he was trying to throw off the yoke of imperialism and yoke of borrowed understanding. And therefore he saw education as the key to expanding our own ideas and developing them as we've been discussing. And I think this is the heart. He wanted Australians to be the centre of their own lives and to work our way outwards from there. And that, I think, has done us good service over the last short while. I think we've been able to develop an understanding of ourselves through film, through literature, through painting and through architecture. So there are good architects in Australia, and there are places that people come from elsewhere to see us.
And it's interesting that this you describe as the heart of the house, really, and it's a garden.
Yes.
In terms of Robin Boyd's views on our natural landscape, what did he want us to do in terms of the natural landscape?
He would have wanted us, and did want us, to conserve natural landscape wherever we could, to use the land more sparingly than we do, and certainly when he was designing houses, the relationship between the land and the garden and the house was always a key element. It wasn't what's left over after you built the house. So the idea of living in your garden and appreciating it and being in the house as almost as one was critical. And you'll see a number of houses of his done in that form.
And it's not a huge block that we're on here, and yet every spare inch has been used, hasn't it?
It's a great space for a party, and you can have drinks parties out here and cups of tea, or you can sit out on your own. And just apart from the noise of nearby neighbours and so on, you would think you're a mile away from everything. So it's very good.
Now, the last part of the house is the children's bedrooms at the back. Can we have a quick look at that?
Yes, we can look at that, and that's Robin's study as well.
Fantastic.
Good.
Excellent. So whereabouts are we now, Daryl?
We're in the back room above the garage in a study that Robin had, and we're looking through there towards the rest of the house, through the courtyard, and you can see that there's an enormous transparency in the design. Things are separated, but there's still visual contact. And the art of modern architecture was to try to create a sense of space, a sense of having space, even if you were not occupying it, but that visually you could see it. And it's on a tiny block of land, it's not that big, but there's a marvellous flow of space that comes through here and is picked up in the integration of the roof that spans across the courtyard, which people will see, and the cable structure that ties it together. So it's a very lightweight form of construction and sense of being a stage set in a funny sort of way. That there's a stage appearance of the upper level balcony to the courtyard, so it's a bit Shakespearean in that sense. So the idea that modernism was sort of barren or not engaging is foreign to Boyd, foreign to myself. We think of architecture as being a performance opportunity for people to live out their lives and to celebrate them in a way.
Well, Daryl Jackson, it's been absolutely fascinating talking to you, learning more about Robin Boyd and getting to see his family home. So thank you so much.
Pleasure.